Hello, my name is Matthew Pfeiffer with MattPfeifferCoaching.com. Welcome to my YouTube channel. On this channel, I create videos and content about toxic, narcissistically abusive relationships. And if you have a question that you'd like for me to answer, make sure that you send it to justaskmatt@MattPfeifferCoaching.com. Again, that is justaskmatt@MattPfeifferCoaching.com. Make sure you keep that email 2 to 3 paragraphs max, and also make sure that you're very direct and to the point of what your question actually is. If it's too long, if it's too lengthy, unfortunately, I will not be able to get to it. Also, make sure you hit the bell notification and you hit the subscribe notification so you're notified each and every time I upload a new video. I upload new videos on this channel 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. With all that being said, let's get into today's email. So today, this email comes from a person who was dating a person, but they're also struggling with a toxic narcissistic ex who is stalking them, who is manipulating and using the kids as a pawn, and it's creating havoc in the dating life. And I know that this is something that is very common for people because narcissists want control. They don't want you moving on. They look at you as a possession. And it can be very difficult to explain this to a new person that because it's common knowledge that when someone has a toxic ex, that's a potential red flag. So how do we turn this from a red flag into a green flag? So let's get into today's email. And this email reads, "Hi Matt, thanks for taking the time to answer this. I left my ex 2.5 years ago. I wasn't dating, but someone new came into my life about 5 months ago. I told the new guy from the beginning that my ex is a hoovering narcissist who can be manipulative, especially with the kids, because he still wants me back. And my kids are my Achilles heel." So we're going to put a bookmark there. We're going to circle back to that. So the good things that you did here is that you were very upfront and honest, right? But we're going to break down that statement that you made there. "Things were getting serious with the new guy, but I hadn't told my ex about him yet." Good job there too. One of the things I tell people is to slow that process down, right? And allow for the two of you, right? For those of you who are dating after and you're sharing kids with a toxic ex, make sure that the relationship is solidified a bit more before you allow for, sometimes you can't help it, you just run into people, but if you can help it, make sure that you solidify and you lay a foundation with the relationship first. One of the things that you don't want is to stir up trouble with the toxic narcissistic ex, and then you find out that you're not into this person or vice versa, because it's very common for things like that to happen on the dating scene. It doesn't make either person bad or narcissistic, right? But that's just common in the dating scene for people to kind of realize that they don't like each other as much as they thought, right? So let's get back into this. Then the new guy just decided to be the martyr and leave before telling the ex to avoid anyone getting hurt. On one hand, I know that this hurt, but on the other hand, good for him. And I know this hurts for you, and I know for a lot of people who are listening to this, you don't want to deal and you don't want to feel the pain of rejection. You may even have a fear of rejection. Rejection is not a bad thing. Rejection is a good thing. You should be glad that he didn't string you along, number one. Number two, right, at the fact that he had question marks, and even at the fact that he may have seen some of these things as red flag, and these were not things that he could tolerate, right? He's allowing for you the opportunity to move on, right? So let's continue with this email. "I'm salty because it feels like my ex relationship is too extra for me to have a new healthy relationship. Basically, what's your advice for dating with a hoovering narcissist for an ex?" So not everyone can tolerate this, right? And so we want to give people who can't tolerate this permission. It's okay, right? If that's not something that they want to put up with, if they don't want to live with that, and here's the reason why we want to be okay with that, right? We want to give people permission. Number one, we want people who are all in, right? If they see this and this is too much for them to take on, because we also have to understand for a lot of guys, they've put up with this before, right? And a lot of guys, they've had to fight other people or they've been threatened. And a lot of times, for them, it's a red flag. Especially if they have kids, especially if they have, businesses or other careers. And it doesn't mean that they don't like you or anything like that. But for someone new, right? I know a lot of people are listening and are probably like, well, you should defend women and things like that. Yes. However, we have to remember these are new relationships, right? And so for a lot of people, they're like, okay, well, if these things are happening now within the first couple of weeks, what's going to continue to happen down the road, right? So the way that we want to explain this and the way that we want to, I want to go back to a statement that you said. I told the new guy from the beginning that my ex is a hoovering narcissist who can be manipulative, especially with the kids, because he still wants me back. And my kids are my Achilles heel. This screams lack of boundaries, screams lack of planning, right? So not only, right, it's one thing to have a toxic, hoovering, narcissistic ex. It's a whole nother ball game when you're telling someone, basically a roundabout way, telling someone that the likelihood that there's a high probability that you're going to fall for the manipulation that you're talking about. That you know exactly what buttons the narcissist is going to press, and you're telling the person that you're dating that they are going to press them and that they are your weaknesses, that your children, and yes, that there's some truth to that, right? However, that's the part of you that actually needs to be healed, right? We have to understand that now that we are no longer with the narcissist, right, we can no longer allow for the narcissist to hijack our emotional center, right? And yes, that's also including with the kids. Because what's happening is that the narcissist, right, and this is, even if the guy doesn't know this up front, right, consciously, and if he can't articulate this, this is what people, right, men and women, both know subconsciously, right, that the narcissist is going to ruin this, right? Even if this person wants to defend you, wants to support you, right, you're already telling him that that the narcissist has the game plan to be able to wreck this, right? And this no longer has anything to do with someone who would want to put up with this, right? Who would want to stay through this. Believe me, there's actually a lot of people who would. However, they want to make sure that you are going to be solid and that you're going to be concrete in your decisions, right? That you are not going to start becoming very flaky based on that other person's behavior. So the way that you want to handle this is that you want to go through a healing process, and you want to make sure that you begin to set enough boundaries mentally, physically, emotionally, financially, and around your time and energy, right? For you to become a lot more authentic, and where this game playing that the narcissist is doing no longer works. If you don't have a court order in place, if you don't have a custody order in place, make sure you have one. Right? Not allowing for the narcissist to use your children as a pawn and as a weapon. Yes, sometimes that means that every once in a while you're going to have to disappoint your kids. Right? But we have to begin to protect our emotional center and protect ourselves through boundaries. And what happens is that now when we meet someone, instead of telling them that you have a crazy narcissistic ex that hoovers you and has the keys to your emotional center and you lack boundaries and you know, this is what you're telling them subconsciously, you're now telling them the game plan. Just so you know, I have a pretty strained relationship with my ex, right? Once they find out that I'm dating, right, they may start to hoover, they may start doing these things. Here's what we're going to do, right? This is what happens if my ex were to ever show up. I'm going to call 911 immediately, right? You take ownership, you begin to take responsibility. And what that does is that shows the other person that, number one, you've learned some things through this process. Number two, you've healed. Number three, you're mature. You've matured since this situation, right? You tell them that this person was abusive or whatever, or was controlling while you were together. But since then, right now, I've gone through therapy. I've read these books. I've done these things. And when they start to do this, when they start to use my children as a pawn, this is what I'm going to do. I just want to be upfront and honest with you about what happens. There's a good chance that this person is going to do this. They may show up at the soccer game when they're not supposed to. And if they do, this is what I'm going to do, right? You begin to explain and you begin to game plan and you begin to show them and talk to them about the boundaries, the new boundaries that you've set. That shows them the maturity, that shows them the lessons learned, that shows them that you've actually grown from this. Right. But when we say, like, when we basically tell them that the way that you explain this, you've basically told this person that your ex still has control over you. And what that screams to your potential partner is that they are the third wheel in the relationship. So we want to handle this in a way that our partner knows that they're dating you, the two of you, if they do decide to invest in this relationship, that this relationship can grow, can move forward, and that the two of you can be a team without the toxic person coming in, ruining it, pressing buttons, and causing you to question yourself, causing you to be flaky. Thank you very much for writing in. Anyone else who would like to write in, make sure you send it to justaskmatt@mattpfeiffercoaching.com. Again, that is justaskmatt@mattpfeiffercoaching.com. Make sure you keep that email 2 to 3 paragraphs max, and also be very direct and to the point of what your question actually is. With all that being said, thank you very much, and I will talk to you in the next video.